do you prepare for a term that you know may put you on the defensive?
Well, we're really just focused on how do we continue to do our job on behalf of Washingtonians. The AG's office has tremendous impact across the state, not only representing state government, but being the advocate for people on environmental issues, civil rights issues, consumer protection issues. And when we have a change in federal administration, that always changes. But obviously, at least from my perspective, the second Trump administration presents some unique challenges for us. And so there's been a lot of work that's been happening over the last year by this office to look through all of the things that President Trump was saying on the campaign trail, that put out in Project 2025, all of which, if executed fully, would have tremendously huge impacts on Washingtonians. And so there's been a lot of work to get ready for that. We'll have to see what actually happens. We do expect some pretty serious and new actions pretty early on in the term, maybe as soon as the first day. And so making sure that we're reading those closely, analyzing the law, and seeing if there's anything that negatively impacts Washingtonians that's illegal. There's going to be big policy changes that come from any change in president. President Trump's going to do a lot of things that I don't like that may not be illegal. But if there are actions that he takes or the administration takes that we think are illegal and that are harming Washingtonians, then we will act.
Specifically with the immigration issue, where do you see a potential problem if, say, immigration officials try to do this mass deportation idea?
Well, it really depends on how they do that, right? There's a lot of things that you could do passing through Congress, for example, that would have much more legitimate authority if it was a new law passed. If it's just about enforcing existing federal law and deporting people who don't have legal status in the United States, you could do that in a very narrowly tailored way that may not be illegal. What I am concerned about, of course, is that we are treating people fairly under the law, whether they are citizens or not. If you are undocumented and living in Washington, you still have legal rights to due process and the like. But given the nature and the way that President Trump and his allies have spoken about it, I do think there's lots of potential ways where people who are not undocumented could get caught up in that, or people who don't have legal status but who could have their rights violated. So we'll have to wait and see how that articulates and how that's executed by the incoming administration. Again, it could be very narrow and appropriate, and it is not the state government's job to enforce immigration laws. That is a federal priority and a federal responsibility. But we need to be very mindful about how they go doing that. And there are a host of things under immigration that could be concerning, and we'll just have to look very closely.
What is it about Project 2025 that you have found to potentially be a risk?
Well, there's a host of things, and I'm not going to pretend to have read the entire document. The team here over the past year under AG Ferguson has been doing a lot of work. I have not done that same.
It's pretty thick.
It is pretty thick. And really all across the country, Attorney General's offices have been looking at that document. But there are things within that document that give me great concern. Things like ending birthright citizenship, which has been part of our constitutional principle for generations now, never once challenged. The idea that you would simply no longer follow this bedrock constitutional principle is very concerning to me. But there are also things around abortion access, for example, and we have concerns about whether or not they're going to try to eliminate the Comstock Act, which has allowed for safe medical abortions to happen in Washington and across the country. And so we're looking really closely at those sorts of things. I do think there will be a lot of day one or week one actions that give us concern, but we just don't know until we see it. But making sure we're prepared for that is really my goal and my obligation. And it is really important for me that people recognize that we have broad job, and there's so much that we're going to continue to do that's nothing to do with Donald Trump and nothing to do with Project 2025. And it is my obligation to make sure this office functions at a really high level, no matter what else is happening. We've got some really big responsibilities and some big mandates, and I'm not going to get too distracted by what might come from the presidential change. We're going to be really focused on that and watching closely, but we've got a lot of other really important work to do, and we're going to do that as well.